Ashes of Dawn, the colony on Dawn Prime, was meant to be a symbol of hope. It was a green world with wide rivers, endless grass fields, and mountains that shone silver in the morning sun. 10 million settlers had left Earth to build a new home there. For years, they had sent back messages filled with joy. They spoke of growing families, new farms, schools, and songs written under alien skies. It was the dream of humanity written across the stars. Then one day, Dawn Prime went silent. At first, Earth thought it was a storm disrupting communications. A relay satellite could have failed. Colonies often had small issues. But as days turned into weeks, the silence grew heavier. Patrol ships were sent to investigate. When they arrived, they found nothing. No voices, no farms, no children laughing on open plains. Cities were gone. The great glass towers were burned to rubble. The colony's defense lines were nothing but melted slag. 10 million lives erased in a single night. The patrol ship sent their scans back to Earth. The images were hard to look at. Charred ground, empty skies, wreckage drifting in orbit. There were no survivors. Not even a distress signal. Only the proof of violence. Scorch marks from weapons not human, not built by any ally. The Council on Earth gathered in silence as the data was shown. Leaders sat around the wide circular hall. Behind them stood military commanders, faces carved in stone. The people of Earth watched from every screen across the planet. No one spoke at first. The silence was too heavy, but then one voice broke through. "They erased our people," said the High Commander. His voice shook not with fear but with anger. 10 million souls gone. Not in war, not in battle, erased. We cannot let this pass. The Council debated. Some argued caution. Humanity had grown strong, but the galaxy was vast. To strike blindly might be dangerous. But the images from Dawn Prime continued to play on every screen. People saw families reduced to ash. They saw homes burned. They saw a human dream destroyed. The anger of billions rose together like a storm. The decision was made. Earth would answer. Factories on Mars roared to life. Orbital shipyards around Jupiter glowed brighter than suns as they worked without pause. Saturn's moons became staging grounds. Earth called every fleet, every reserve, every hidden ship kept in silence for a day like this. Old warships were pulled from storage, upgraded and armed. New ships rolled out by the hundreds each day. Engineers worked without sleep. Soldiers volunteered in numbers greater than anyone expected. The call was simple. Humanity has been attacked. A colony has been erased. We answer now. In less than a year, 500,000 warships stood ready. Some were small escorts, others were titans the size of cities. Together they formed the greatest fleet humanity had ever known. But the question remained, who did this? Scouts followed the trails of strange radiation found on Dawn Prime. The marks pointed to an empire far from Earth, beyond the rim of mapped space. A people known only in whispers, beings who saw themselves as rulers of the void. They were not unknown to traders, but they had never dared to strike at humanity before. Perhaps they thought Earth was still weak, still divided. They were wrong. As the fleet gathered, ordinary people on Earth watched the sky. Families waved at the ships as they rose into orbit. Children painted their windows with symbols of the fleet. Cities held vigils for the lost souls of Dawn Prime. The name of the colony became a cry shouted in unison, "For Dawn!" In the deep black, the warships aligned. Their hulls reflected the light of distant suns. Lines of steel and fire stretched farther than the eye could see. Captains gave final words to their crews. Soldiers tightened their armor. Pilots whispered promises to the dead. The order was given. Earth's answer began its march. 500,000 warships moved as one, engines burning like a new constellation. The galaxy, once silent at the loss of Dawn Prime, now trembled as humanity advanced. This was no mere response. This was a promise. Humanity would not forget. Humanity would not forgive, and soon the ones who erased Dawn Prime would learn the meaning of fear. The first strike. The fleet left the safety of Sol and entered the dark unknown. 500,000 warships moved in formation, their engines glowing like rivers of fire. Each ship carried the weight of grief, the rage of Earth, and the memory of Dawn Prime. Humanity had never gathered such strength before. It was more than a fleet. It was the will of a species turned into steel. Scouts moved ahead, following the faint trails left by the enemy. The radiation from their weapons was strange. unlike anything human science had recorded before the massacre. The signals led deeper into the void, past abandoned systems and dust clouds where old stars had died. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The trail pointed to a cluster of systems ruled by the enemy. For centuries, the species that had erased Dawn Prime had remained distant. They did not trade openly, nor did they seek peace. They looked down on other civilizations, seeing them as tools or prey. Smaller races had vanished in the shadows of their empire, but no one had dared to speak against them. Many had suspected the truth, but none had proof. Now humanity had proof. The first enemy patrol was spotted at the edge of a barren system. A group of 12 ships, sleek and sharp, moved across the black-like blades. They carried no insignia, but their weapon signatures matched the scars on Dawn Prime. The order was simple: engage. The patrol never stood a chance. From the shadows of an asteroid belt, human ships opened fire. Torpedoes streaked through the void. Energy beams tore across the silence. The enemy's shields glowed, but they were not ready for the storm that fell upon them. Within minutes, all 12 ships were burning wrecks. No survivors remained. It was the first blood taken for Dawn Prime. Word spread quickly through the fleet. On every ship, crews cheered. The names of the fallen colony were shouted once more. But the commanders were calm. This was only the beginning. The patrol would be missed. The enemy would now know, and soon they would answer. Humanity wanted them to answer. The fleet advanced. In system after system, more patrols fell. Stations burned. Outposts were shattered. Every strike carried the same message: Earth remembers. At last, scouts reached the edge of the enemy's territory. Here the stars glowed red, and the worlds were scarred from centuries of war. The Empire had enslaved weaker races, forcing them to work in mines and factories. On one captured moon, human Marines landed. They found beings chained in dark tunnels, their bodies thin, their voices weak. These were survivors of other colonies destroyed long before Dawn Prime. Their stories were filled with horror, entire civilizations crushed without mercy. The Marines freed them. For the first time in centuries, the oppressed saw hope. They looked at the human soldiers standing tall in iron armor, and they whispered words that would spread like fire. Humans fight back. The news reached the heart of the enemy empire. For them it was unthinkable. No prey had ever risen with such fury. No conquered world had ever dared to strike at them. But humanity was different. Humanity did not bow. Humanity did not kneel. Humanity carried fire in its veins. The enemy gathered fleets of their own, thousands of ships built for conquest, armed with weapons that had destroyed worlds. Their commanders believed numbers would crush this upstart species. They prepared to meet the humans in open war. The stage was set. On the edge of a dying star system, the two forces finally saw each other. 500,000 human warships on one side, the enemy's armada on the other. The silence of space was broken only by the hum of engines and the thrum of weapons charging. On every human ship, crews stood ready. Soldiers gripped their weapons. Pilots adjusted their controls. Captains gave their final orders. No one spoke of fear. Only determination filled the void. The High Commander's voice reached every ship. Remember Dawn Prime. Remember the families who were erased. Today we strike not for revenge alone, but to show the galaxy what it means to harm humanity. Hold the line. Break their strength. Let no one forget this day. The order was given. Engines roared. Weapons lit up the dark. The war had truly begun. Fire across the stars. The battlefield was a dead system, its sun a dim ember and its planets long reduced to rock. Here in the shadow of silence, two armadas faced one another. On one side, 500,000 human warships lined in disciplined formations, their hulls gleaming with fresh steel. On the other, the enemy's grand fleet, vast in number, built from centuries of conquest, their ships sharp and cruel like blades drawn for slaughter. For a moment, the void held its breath. Then the first shot was fired. A spear of plasma streaked across the black, tearing into a human frigate. The ship erupted in flames, its crew lost in seconds. The silence broke and the stars lit with war. Human ships answered in kind. Waves of torpedoes spread like firestorms. Railguns thundered, their slugs tearing through the dark faster than light could chase. Beams of energy split across the battlefield, slicing enemy cruisers in two. Explosions bloomed like dying stars, painting the void with fire. The enemy fleet surged forward, their confidence built on centuries of unchallenged rule. They fired salvos of weapons that had destroyed countless civilizations. Their shields flared, their cannons burned, and for a time they pushed deep into the human line. But humanity did not break. Human fleets fought with discipline, each formation moving like a single body. Smaller ships darted between the giants, striking weak points and vanishing before the enemy could lock onto them. Carriers released wings of strike craft that swarmed like steel wasps, overwhelming larger vessels. Destroyers shielded cruisers, cruisers shielded battleships, and battleships unleashed devastation that shook the void. In the heart of the battle, human titans, the great dreadnoughts, advanced. Each one was a fortress in space, bristling with weapons. They cut paths through the enemy's largest ships, their guns thundering without pause. When one dreadnought was struck down, its last act was to ram an enemy flagship, shattering both into burning fragments. The enemy had never faced such fury. For every human ship that fell, 10 more pressed forward. For every patrol lost, Earth had sent a squadron. For every scream silenced on Dawn Prime, 100 cannons roared. Hours turned into a day. The battlefield was littered with wreckage, drifting bodies, and shattered steel. But the humans did not relent. Their commanders gave no order to retreat. The fleet held, and slowly the tide shifted. Enemy formations broke. Their ships, once moving with arrogance, began to scatter. Human warships surged forward, pressing the advantage. Strike craft pierced enemy carriers, setting off chain explosions. Torpedoes found their marks. Railguns hammered through weakened shields. At last, the enemy's central command ship was exposed. It was massive, a fortress bigger than cities, bristling with weapons that had silenced whole worlds. It stood at the center of their pride, their proof of dominance. But pride could not stop steel. Every human ship that still had power turned its guns upon it. Waves of fire rained down, tearing into its hull. Piece by piece, the command ship crumbled. Its shields collapsed. Its engines failed. Flames erupted across its body until the final blow came. A human dreadnought that hurled itself forward in a last strike, ramming through the weakened hull. The explosion shook the system, brighter than the dead star it orbited. Silence followed. The enemy fleet, once unshaken, faltered. Their formation shattered. Survivors fled into the dark, their arrogance burned away. Humanity had won the first great battle. Across the human fleet, voices rose in triumph. Crews cheered, pounding their fists against metal walls. Soldiers in armor raised their weapons high. Pilots, exhausted but alive, shouted into their comms. The name of Dawn Prime was spoken again and again, carried across the stars. Yet among the cheers, the commanders remained quiet. They knew the war was far from over. The enemy had been struck but not destroyed. They would regroup, rebuild, and strike again. Humanity had won a victory, but the cost was heavy. Tens of thousands of lives lost, ships burning in the void, families waiting at home for messages that would never come. Still, the meaning was clear. The galaxy had watched. The galaxy had seen. Humanity had faced the empire that erased a colony, and humanity had not broken. For the first time in centuries, the rulers of the void had bled, and Earth was not finished. The Empire Strikes Back, the first great battle, had ended in fire. Humanity had won, but the war was far from over. Across the galaxy, the message spread like lightning. The humans fought back. The humans won. On enslaved worlds, whispers rose in the dark. On trading routes, merchants spoke of the impossible. An empire that had crushed civilizations for centuries had finally been wounded. Some races began to hope. Others trembled, for hope always brought war. Deep within their empire, the enemy seethed. Their high council, creatures of pride and cruelty, could not believe what had happened. Never before had prey stood against them. Never before had their fleets broken. But the wreckage of their armada told the truth. They answered the only way they knew, with overwhelming force. Factories across their empire roared to life. Shipyards forged vessels larger, deadlier, built with weapons designed to tear even dreadnoughts apart. Entire fleets were recalled from distant conquests. Millions of soldiers were armed, trained, and sent into the void. The Empire meant to crush humanity completely, to erase not only Earth but every trace of humankind from the stars. The counterattack came swift. The first strike hit the colony of New Horizon. A young settlement on the edge of Sol's influence, it had been growing for decades. Its people woke one night to fire in the sky. Enemy warships dropped from the void, weapons raining destruction. Defense fleets fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. Cities were turned to rubble. Millions perished. It was Dawn Prime all over again. But this time, Earth was not silent. Within hours, human warships arrived. They tore into the attackers, forcing them back, but the damage was already done. New Horizon burned. Survivors wept under shattered domes, their grief the same as Dawn Prime's. Humanity saw the truth. The enemy would not stop until either humanity or the Empire was ashes. The war spread across the stars. In one system, human fleets clashed with enemy armadas for weeks, each side pouring more ships into the fire. Asteroids were shattered into dust, planets scarred with craters the size of seas. In another, human marines boarded massive slave stations, freeing thousands of captives before detonating the reactors to deny the enemy their prize. Strike craft streaked across the void like angry comets, dueling fighters that moved faster than sight. Victories were won, but losses mounted. Humanity was strong, but the Empire had ruled for centuries. They knew war. They had numbers beyond count. For every human ship destroyed, replacements came, but slower than the enemy's endless wave. Human commanders began to feel the strain. Supply lines stretched thin. Shipyards worked without rest, yet still could not match the pace. Earth itself grew tense. People watched the skies with both pride and fear. They cheered victories, but each funeral bell reminded them of the cost. Factories on Mars and Jupiter burned brighter. Yet families prayed every night for the return of sons and daughters lost in the void. Then came the darkest hour. In the Vega system, the largest human fleet yet assembled, clashed with the Empire's Grand Armada. For days, the battle raged across planets and moons. Explosions lit the skies like a second sun. Human warships fought with fury, but the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. One by one, ships fell. A line of defense was broken. Another followed. In the final hours, surrounded on all sides, human commanders made a desperate choice. They activated scorched earth protocols. Dreadnoughts overloaded their cores, detonating in massive bursts of energy that consumed whole swaths of the enemy fleet. The sacrifice saved the survivors, allowing a fraction of the fleet to retreat. The battle was remembered as both victory and tragedy. The Empire had been wounded again, but humanity had lost more than ever before. Tens of thousands of ships gone, millions dead, entire families wiped from history. For the first time, fear touched Earth. Could they truly survive against such an enemy? Could even 500,000 ships be enough? But fear did not break them. At the council chambers, the High Commander stood before billions. His face was marked with grief, yet his voice carried steel. They believe we are weak. They believe we will bow. They are wrong. For every world they burn, we will burn 10 of theirs. For every life they steal, we will take 100. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity endures. The word spread across Earth, Mars, the colonies, and every warship still standing. The people answered with one cry, for Dawn, for Horizon, for Earth. The war was reaching its peak. Both sides bled. Both sides burned. The final reckoning was near. The day of reckoning, the war had scarred the stars. Whole systems lay in ruins. Fleets drifted as wreckage, planets burned, and countless lives were lost. Humanity had endured, but the struggle had pushed them to the edge. Factories strained, families mourned, and soldiers fought until exhaustion claimed them. Yet still they rose. The enemy believed time would break humanity. That endless waves of warships would drown them, that fear would silence them. But instead humanity grew fiercer. Each world destroyed added fuel to their fire. Each colony erased became a name carved into steel. Each battle lost only hardened their will. The Council of Earth made its decision. No more retreats. No more scattered battles. The war would end not at the borders, but at the enemy's heart. The order was given. All fleets assemble. Every surviving warship, every rebuilt dreadnought, every carrier, destroyer, and strike craft gathered in a storm of steel. 500,000 strong once more, the greatest fleet humanity had ever forged. They would strike at the Empire's throne world. The journey was long. Through hostile systems and enemy ambushes, the fleet carved its path. Planetary defenses fell one after another. Slave worlds were liberated, their people freed, their voices added to the growing chorus, humans fight back. Each victory pulled allies closer. Races long crushed by the Empire now sent what little aid they could. Humanity was no longer fighting alone. At last, the throne world came into view. It was a massive planet wrapped in rings of steel. Shipyards stretched across its orbit, building fleets that blotted out the stars. Defensive satellites filled the skies. It was the heart of the Empire, the seat of their pride and the monument to their cruelty. To reach it would mean passing through fire greater than anything before. The High Commander's voice echoed across the fleet. This is the world that ordered Dawn Prime's death. This is the world that believed humanity would kneel. Today we end that lie. For Dawn, for Horizon, for Earth, forward! The final battle began. The Empire's defenses unleashed a storm. Beams lanced across the void. Missiles filled the black. Waves of enemy warships poured forth. It was as if the entire galaxy had turned against the humans. But humanity answered with fire. Dreadnoughts surged forward, their guns blazing. Strike-craft poured from carriers, darting between giants to tear holes in enemy lines. Railguns thundered like the heartbeat of Earth itself. Torpedoes streaked in endless volleys, shattering fortresses that had stood for centuries. The void became fire. For hours, the battle raged. Human ships were torn apart, but others surged to fill the gaps. The enemy's numbers seemed endless, but so too was humanity's fury. Every ship fought as if Dawn Prime itself rode with them. Crews screamed defiance even as their hulls cracked and their reactors burned. Slowly, the tide turned. Humanity broke through the outer defenses. They punched into the orbit of the throne world, burning shipyards and silencing cannons. One by one, the Empire's fleets faltered. Their commanders shouted for retreat, but humanity pressed on, refusing to stop. Then came the final blow. A formation of human dreadnoughts drove straight into the heart of the enemy's last defensive wall. Their guns roared, their hulls ablaze, but they did not stop. They cleared a path for the flagship of the High Commander himself. With every weapon blazing, the flagship unleashed a storm upon the planet below. Orbital cannons fell silent. Shields collapsed. The throne world trembled, and then with one final strike, the Empire's capital fell. Explosions tore across its surface. Towers of arrogance crumbled into ash. The rulers who had erased Dawn Prime were no more. The galaxy watched. The message was clear. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. When the battle ended, silence fell across the stars. Survivors from enslaved races wept with joy. Merchants whispered of a new order. And even the darkest corners of the galaxy knew the truth. Earth had risen. 500,000 warships had carried grief and rage across the stars, and they had returned with victory. On Earth, bells rang. Families embraced, tears falling for those lost and cheers rising for those who returned. Across colonies, people looked to the sky with pride. Humanity had paid the cost, but they had endured. The High Commander stood before the Council once more. His voice carried not only to Earth, but to every free world now listening. Let this be remembered. Dawn Prime was erased, but humanity stood. We fought, we bled, and we triumphed. To those who would harm us, know this: humanity endures. Humanity answers, and humanity will never kneel. The galaxy trembled. For the first time, the stars belonged not to empires of cruelty, but to a species that had carried fire in its heart since the beginning, and all who heard the story knew. This was humanity, at last.